Well, welcome back. Wow, what an honor. I've been looking forward to our special guest today, Dr. Josh McConkey. He's the Air Force colonel, a combat physician, the author of an award-winning book and best-selling book entitled Be the Weight Behind the Spear. There's a picture of the cover of his book on the screen there. Colonel McConkey, military service includes providing critical medical support in both wartime and peacetime operations, with over 340 hours as a flight surgeon, 90 combat hours in rotor wing medical evacuation and air assault missions in the Middle East. He's a Air Medal, and a Army Commendation Medal recipient for exemplary service during Operation Iraq. Wow, a lot there. He does have a website, and it's the title of the book, weightbehindthespear.com, and there's the picture of the landing page. Wow, Colonel, good to see you. How are you, friend?
Doing very well. Thanks for having me on the show this morning.
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks for your time. We value it greatly. Boy, a lot to talk to you about. Let me just ask you, as a flight surgeon, this sounds political, but it's not. I think we're all deeply concerned. How did all of this health issue with President Biden get silenced?
That is a very good question that many Americans want answers to.
Yeah.
So you see a diagnosis of advanced prostate cancer like this, so a stage 4 cancer with a Gleason score of 9, that generally will be 5 to 10 years in development. Now, only the president and his physician would know when those symptoms started to be exhibited. I have not examined the president. I have not physically looked at his medical record, but it's safe. I can assure you that this disease process started while he was president of the United States. And we have a lot of questions on, did that have some impact on his mental status, his cognitive decline? I think a lot of Americans want answers.
Medically speaking, can the diagnosis of an aggressive prostate cancer affect somebody's cognitive abilities?
When you have metastatic spread, so they've already said that there was spread to the bone. When you get spread to the brain, when it metastasizes to the brain, it could exhibit in these types of symptoms. Only him and his doctor know for sure if that's the case. I haven't been able to look at those medical records, but it's very concerning.
How would you otherwise explain his cognitive disabilities?
So I ran a congressional race in 2023, 2024. I lost in the primary, and I had talked pretty extensively about my concerns for his cognitive decline at that point. I'm a commander at Andrews Air Force Base in the reserves. I do know some colleagues that have flown with President Biden while he was president, and they have some very disturbing stories of him walking down those air stairs and just wandering off on the tarmac when the limousine was clearly right in front of him, and they had to kind of shepherd him over there. So there were clearly concerns over the last several years. I think hiding that and shielding that from the American people was very detrimental to our national security, and we're just now getting answers.
Is it worth investigating, or do we just feel sorry for him and let him walk off to the sunset?
When you are responsible for the nuclear football, for the most powerful country on planet Earth, we need those answers. And we need to know, just for the simple fact that we don't want something like that repeated again. Mm-hmm. It clearly has national security implications. And, I'm not sure who's responsible for investigating that. The book that was just released, I have not got a chance to read yet. It's the CNN anchor. There's a lot of probably some answers in there. I have not had the chance to read it yet.
Okay. Sticking with some military changes, it looks like the Department of Defense is slowly being de-woked. What do you think?
Oh, I'm so happy with the changes that Pete Hegseth and President Trump have made. As a military commander, our job is to unleash air power. As an Air Force, I'm a flight surgeon, I'm a commander. Our job to, when called upon, deliver lethal force. It's a difficult job. It's a job that we don't want to do, but when called upon for our national security and the defense of this nation, we will do that. When you change the focus of our military from that singular focus of delivering lethality to a lot of that DEI and the woke agenda and that time and money that had been invested. As a military commander, there were huge parts of my time that were devoted to those things that I didn't necessarily agree with, but we do have civilian-led leadership. I'm very thankful with our current administration changing that direction.
So how deeply infiltrated was this into the military?
I had seen a lot of senior level, when you talk about some general positions and senior level leadership, they were clearly filling quotas. You know, I probably stopped short of saying whether they were qualified or not, but the focus of filling a lot of positions was not on that meritocracy. It was not based on who's the best person for the job. It was to fill quotas and to fill some DEI initiatives. I just feel that it was anti-American, and it was really against what we stand for in the military, regardless of where you come from, color, creed, any of those. It's based on your what you bring to the table, your professionalism. And when you start changing those metrics and, you know, start injecting some of the DEI metrics in there, it really takes away from what we do as a military.
So you as a flight surgeon, I guess you were limited to what the brass allowed, right?
Yeah, so especially as a commander, you know, we have civilian-led leadership of our military. I believe in that. That's constitutional, and I support the Constitution of the United States. I had a lot of concerns with the directions that they were taking. And when I use one example, we had done a large military exercise in the Pacific Northwest in 2023. It was a U.S. Transportation Command exercise where, you know, if something were to happen in the Pacific, obviously concerned with China and Taiwan, how are we going to evacuate those casualties? It involved the U.S. Medical Disaster Team, Department of Defense, the VA, and all the civilian hospitals. I did an interview on NBC. The night before the interview, the Biden administration gave me 4 pages of things I could not talk about on air. I could not say the word China. So it was embarrassing, to be quite honest. The very first question that the anchor asks is, of course, is this exercise in response to Chinese aggression in Taiwan, which I could not say the word China, and there was a canned response that they had us, you know, articulate. But, you know, when you're more concerned about upsetting China than preparing and defending this nation, you know, for potential conflict, I do not agree with that. And I think 76 million other people had that concern as well, and that's why Trump's in office.
Gosh, how did you wrestle this in your soul, in your faith?
You know, my faith has carried me through all of my military service. In 2007, in Iraq, flying medevac missions, I did 1 air assault. I would not have survived mentally without my faith. My chaplain, I'll give a shout out to Jim Higgins, was a big part of that, and he was able to come to my assumption of command speech that I gave in 2022 in August. So it was great to see him there. But that faith has carried me through everything. And at times, it was difficult as a military commander, but we do have civilian-led leadership, and I support the Constitution.
Thank you. One other quick question before I move on. As you look back on Iraq and our exit, how do you process that?
Very, very difficult. So when you see men and women paying that ultimate sacrifice, I carried those body bags off of helicopters. I took care of those men and women. I had always told myself that we were in there for the long haul. It was very strategic. You know, the air base in Balad alone, you know, keeping that check on Iran. And then in 2011, when Obama just pulled us out of there, I had you know, you see those repeat from Vietnam. It's like our civilian leadership just continues to make the same mistakes. And for all the men and women that I saw die over there, I know we were there for each other and for our nation. But when you saw everything pulled out and then the complete debacle in Afghanistan, it really leads you to question, you know, some of the leadership and some of those decisions. And it really had a large part to play in why I decided to run for Congress and now Lieutenant Governor here in North Carolina.
Oh, you're running for Lieutenant Governor?
Yes, sir.
Our prayers with you, buddy. You think war is bad? Wait till you get into politics. Oh, okay. Wow. Well, thank you for your service. This is amazing. What do you mean by the weight behind the spear?
So for me, that's been my personal leadership ethos. I've got a chance to work with special operations. I was medical director for PJs that do combat search and rescue. And you realize that these are true heroes. They do things that no one else on the planet can do. That's the tip of the spear. I don't jump out of airplanes. I don't take down bin Laden. I save lives. I don't take lives as a physician. But I can be the weight behind the spear before the men, for the men and women that do those things. And that's our best resource that we have in this country. It's coaches, volunteers, teachers, and families. That is what sets us apart. That is what China fears. That is what Russia fears, is that resource that we have in our people. And so you can be the weight behind your community, volunteer in your church, your school, go coach Little League. Those things make a huge difference and give confidence to our children, and they're going to be our next generation of leaders.
That's so well said. That is so well said. Thank you for that, because I think there is a genuine hunger for this now, don't you think? I mean, can you feel the shift in the culture saying, enough of the nonsense, let's get back to serving one another?
Yes, and that's really the whole message of the book. Regardless of which side of the fence that you're on politically, we all can agree that our future is in our children, and we need them to be successful. We need them to have leadership skills and resiliency and that faith to carry them through difficult times. That's really the whole focus of the book.
Good for you. How would you apply this to, say, business leaders?
Boy, business leaders, they oftentimes don't realize that this is their problem until they go to hire these kids. So these kids are coming out of high school, they're coming out of college. It is your problem. And the amount of time that you have to spend on teaching those basics, the simple like leadership, accountability, ownership in whatever organization that they're working in, you are not going to be successful as a business leader until they are up to speed. So the earlier you get involved, get out there and volunteer in your church or your school or coach. It is going to be your problem because they're coming to you looking for jobs eventually.
All right. Let me take a quick break. Check out Dr. Josh McConkey's book called Weight Behind the Spear. That's also the website, weightbehindthespear.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's such an honor to have with us Dr. Josh McConkey. He is the Air Force colonel and combat physician. He has a book entitled, and it's an award-winning book, Be the Weight Behind the Spear. There is the cover, picture of the cover of the book on the screen there. And that's also the website, weightbehindthespear.com. You can go there and check it all out. Dr. McConkey, with all the changes going on with this administration, I know this sounds political, but it is kind of interesting to me that it looks like enlistment's an all-time high. Are you hearing that?
It's been a monumental shift. And it's pretty common sense, but when you focus on abilities and professionalism and just doing the job of being in the military, I think a lot of men and women want to serve in a military that focuses on just that. And so you saw an immediate shift in December alone, right after the November election, 120, 130% of quotas being met. We had seen a very sharp decline in recruiting during the last years of the Biden administration for those obvious reasons. And now we have an administration that really supports our mission and what we're about in the military, and it's about defending the nation, not DEI. And so those recruiting numbers have shot up tremendously. It's been great.
So, gosh, there's so much here. As a physician and member of the military, how bad was COVID from your perspective?
Boy, COVID, if you put it in the most simplest terms, almost sucked your will to live. As a physician, seeing just you saw the changes and the bad policy decisions made by, certain governments, depending which state you were in, that had no scientific basis whatsoever, from the 6 feet of distancing to the paper masks to just the death and a lot of destruction. I saw a lot of families torn apart. And then when you saw people, what was really disturbing for me as a physician is when you see people on their deathbed and all they want to have there with them is their family or their pastor or those priests, just those very basic fundamental things that I think every human being has a right to, they were denied. And so people were literally just dying completely by themselves without any family. And that, man, that was really hard to watch as a physician. It was very strange times. And I hope it's something that we never return to.
Wow. What's your take on the vaccine?
The vaccine, so I'm a physician and I support vaccines. We have great vaccines when you talk with combating polio and yellow fever. This vaccine in particular, I had concerns with. The research was not there yet. It is a new technology, those mRNA vaccines. I wanted to see more transparency in our government, and I just want them to be honest. If they had come right out the gate and said, look, this is new technology, this may or may not, prevent the spread of the disease. When they came out and just flat out lied and said, listen, this is going to prevent the spread of the disease. We want you to immunize everybody, children, adults, young adults. The people that had the risks were the ones that should have been, assuming the risk of the vaccine. So when you were exposing a lot of children to this vaccine, you have to be honest with parents. Tell them, listen, it may or may not prevent the spread of the vaccine. And when you look at some of the risks for the very young and healthy children, it's, there were some, children that had medical conditions that were higher risk, and there certainly were some deaths in those populations. But on the whole, I don't think the risks of the vaccine were outweighed by the risks of the disease in that younger population. And you have to let people make that decision. When you tell people that they have to inject this foreign substance into their body, or you're going to remove the ability to put food on the table for their family, was so un-American and so inappropriate. You have to let people make a choice. And if you haven't made that case to people and been open and honest and transparent, they just decide not to take that vaccine, that's their right. This is America.
Today, has the vaccine ever shook off the term experimental?
There's a very good argument that this vaccine, the COVID vaccine, it didn't prevent the spread of the disease. So if you look at it as just more of a therapeutic, certainly more experimental, but it just kind of raises the level of antibodies in the bloodstream. It doesn't prevent the spread of the disease. So there's a few questions that I think a lot of people have with that vaccine. And,
yeah,
I'm a doctor. I do promote vaccines. They're great things, but this one in particular I had concerns with.
Okay, to that point, one more question, and that is there substance to now post-reaction to the vaccine several years out? We're hearing various reports that people are having heightened problems because of the vaccine. Any truth to any of that?
Well, I haven't got to see, there hasn't been the transparency. I want to see the actual studies and those reports. Mm-hmm. But there are definitely, everyone's familiar with the long COVID, the inability to smell. There's been neurologic issues. We saw definitely some short-term and long-term effects from the vaccine itself. In the U.S. and in Australia, I was in Australia in 2021. There was one of the vaccines that had really high rates of stroke, blood clotting, and some bleeding that they really couldn't attribute to anything other than just the vaccine itself. And there's some of the cardiac issues, and then the more short term when you had myocarditis, pericarditis, some inflammation and things around the heart, and some unusual neurologic things. I haven't seen a real sharp study that the government has released kind of showing and documenting that yet. I think there needs to be more transparency, and I know it's something that this current administration is working on.
It's a little bit hypothetical, I guess, Doctor, but if this is hypothetical, but if another COVID-type pandemic was to break out, how do we trust our government now?
And that's where my concern with the public health is. When you had something like this COVID vaccine and you weren't completely honest and transparent, you have fueled that distrust in our government. And there's up to, when you look at the Gen Z, like I call them the COVID generation, the last half of Gen Z, almost 70% of them have a pretty large distrust in their government institutions because of what happened during COVID, shutting down their entire lives, their school, their churches. So we can't let that happen again. And that's one of the reasons I'm running for lieutenant governor right now, is the next sniffle, the next bird flu, the next thing that comes along. We cannot have an administration that's going to support shutting down our businesses and our schools and our churches again. We can't have that repeat in history.
Yeah, even if there was an attempt to do it, it seemed like there would be such civil unrest we almost couldn't handle it.
Oh, I hope so. And I saw the extreme side of that 1 year I spent in Australia, where I saw them shut down an apartment complex in Melbourne for 111 days. And then I watched them, actually, the secret police locked down a grocery store in Adelaide to force people to check into the contact tracing app, which was then used for the GPS facial recognition on that. They were threatening to throw people in jail if you didn't scan your face. They would tell you that there was an exposure. They wouldn't tell you who, when, or where the exposure was, but now you scan your face and they've got the GPS tracking. And if you were more than 50 meters from where they told you to be, there was just arrests with no questions asked. So very, very strange. That can never happen in the United States.
Yeah, I have friends in Australia, same report, so it's valid. Let me ask you this. To that point of young people distrust, and to your point of your book, The Weight Behind the Spear, how can we reach that generation? They're looking for something, they're looking for the truth when they've been lied to.
Yeah.
How do we touch them, Coach?
That's a great question. We have to do this the old-fashioned way, face to face. Human beings and humanity for thousands of years, we communicate. It's face to face. Social media has pluses and minuses. It does not change the fact that we need to have time together. So your family, your friends, your colleagues, that weight behind your spear, that's the best resource we have in this country. We have to get out there and coaching and volunteering, going out to your community shelters, your animal shelters. Everyone has something different to give, but it has to be face to face, and to win this generation back and help them be successful.
All right, the book is entitled The Weight Behind the Spear. That's also the website, weightbehindthespear.com. Again, a picture of the book, and there's the landing page. Tell us about your race. So you're running for lieutenant governor. Do you have a campaign website?
Well, right now it's Stronger, so we are stronger together, strongernc.com for that website. And then obviously more with the book, with Weight Behind the Spear. And we've got a lot of work to do here in North Carolina, and it's a team sport, so I need everybody.
So when's your primary?
So this race is not until 2028. So we have a lot of time.
Oh.
We have our midterm elections. But for me, my congressional race that I ran in 2023 and 2024, I was outspent by $12 million. My dad's a railroader. I don't have that kind of money. So I have to do this the old-fashioned way and actually get out there and talk with people and campaign.
Good. How's it going?
Going very well so far.
Good. So North Carolina, how's it been since the hurricane?
So Western North Carolina, so I've actually started a nonprofit organization, the Weight Behind the Spear Foundation for Western North Carolina. Hurricane Helene brought just devastation, biblical, and sometimes that's out of people's minds. So we really appreciate the help and the support. If you go to weightbehindthespear.com/foundation, you can donate. And we're working a lot with Samaritan's Purse right now to help rebuild Western North Carolina.
Isn't it interesting? FEMA just failed completely over there, but you got people like, Franklin Graham and Samaritan's Purse that are making a huge difference. And they haven't abandoned. They're still there. In fact, they're increasing their operation.
Absolutely. So I'm actually meeting with them next week, as a matter of fact. So they're doing wonderful work in Western North Carolina, as they do to a lot of areas across the country and the world. It's a wonderful organization. And, we are stronger together. The government is not going to save us. That's why when you see FEMA and you see these continual failures, it has to be you. You need to get out there in your community. It's always about the community and the people around you and your faith.
Doctor, thank you. You're an inspiration. Check out his website, weightbehindthespear.com. Check out the book, The Weight Behind the Spear, and you'll find it to be very inspiring. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your passion. God bless you, my friend.
Thank you. God bless.